by saying congratulations on the brand new album. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your history as a musician. When did you fall in love with the cello?
Oh, sure. Well, I started playing the cello when I was at school, when I was about 10. And I actually wound up doing it as one of my final year subjects when I did year 12. Then I didn't play for about 5 or 6 years because, when you're forced to do something, it sort of turns you against it.
Yeah.
Especially something which you love. And it was only in the early 90s when a friend of mine was putting on a play. He said, "Do you want to come play cello?" And that play was called The Persecution and Assassination of Marat, as performed by the inmates of the Asylum of Cheriton, for the record.
Okay.
Or Marat Sard, to be short. But, and it was just from doing that I started to sort of experiment and sort of find my own voice through it, and started using it as a songwriting device with the bands that I played in. And only the last, say, 2 years that I've been sort of performing solo have I started to really just take it to the limit in terms of what it's capable of, and just experimenting with this loop pedal that I use. And so I've been playing it for like a long time, but only really the way that I play it now for a couple of years, I suppose.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that. Most people that play the cello would end up in an orchestra or a group like that. What made you go for the alternative side of what you can do with a cello? Like, what attracted you to that side?
Well, my background is sort of more in like rock music, and particularly bands that I liked when I grew up with, like the Butthole Surfers and the Dead Kennedys and Motorhead and people along those lines, and Sturza de Neubahr, more experimental sort of things. Whilst I do like classical music, it must be said too, I wasn't really good enough to go down that road, even if I had have wanted to. So I just didn't really have the classical chops. And my tastes have always been left of centre, be it in music or film or books or whatever. So I guess just the desire to experiment and try and push the envelope a bit further and things like that, I guess.
Yeah. You mentioned before that you started to use the cello for some of the songwriting with some of the bands that you were in. How did that come about, and what was the rest of the band's reaction when you first started to do that?
They were all pretty open-minded. Like, the first one was the ergot derivative, this sort of psychedelic thing. So I played that in a couple of instrumentals, and even like with a hard rock group like Berserk, because when the cello's amplified, it's got quite a nice low-end Sun O sounding kind of to it. Yep. It was always met quite favourably, with the bands and with the band's audiences. Because after playing, I was playing entirely cello, I think. There are some people who use it. It seems to be a fairly underutilised, beautiful thing for whatever reason. I can't really understand why. But,
yeah. When you listen to the album, you realise that there's so many different layers and everything there. What's your songwriting process like, and your recording process? Because, with all those layers, it must take you a while to record each track.
Sure, it does. It takes ages. I actually overdub all of them. All the songs are more or less written with a view to playing live. So when I play live, I can just whack on the loop pedal and we're all fine. But to write them, basically a song takes about 9 to 12 months these days. Just trying to get the arrangements right, and a melody that I like, but particularly the lyrics. The lyrics are particularly difficult.
Yeah.
And recording it sort of takes ages. I mean, whilst I try and record pretty quickly, it's just like doing like layer upon layer upon layer. I mean, it's very enjoyable. I mean, I like doing it.
Yeah.
But the record itself, I think, was recorded and mixed and mastered in about 6 days. So
wow, yeah.
So it sounds pretty quick, but like when you're recording it, you sort of get a sense of how it's sounding anyway. So the mix is just sort of icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But, certainly, the songs take ages and ages to reach their sort of like from the start to sort of completion. I mean, I've got notebooks, full of ideas and stuff that I try and get to and stuff, but no, it's a very long process.
Yeah. And what normally comes first for you, the lyrics or the music?
Oh, the music always. The music always. Like I'll just be walking along and get a melody in my head, or even I have a piano in my home and I sort of noodle on that. That's a good source of inspiration, but always music first, definitely.
Yeah. And what kind of things inspire your lyrics? Like, is it just life itself that inspires the lyrics, or sometimes does the music itself inspire the lyrics?
That's right. The music very much can. Broadly speaking, it's a combination of, well, I guess your experience, your environment, I guess your perception, like your take on things. In my case, it's normally fairly jaundiced and bleak, it has to be said. Or even like the rumblings of the subconscious. Like the subconscious can be quite a well for things like, your dreams and sort of unusual experiences you have when you sleep and things like that. And I try and be not too specific with them as well. Like, whilst they all have meaning to me, I try and keep them a little bit open-ended, so that people can sort of grab whatever they wish to grab from them. I mean, lyrics is one of those tricky things because the songs are quite short, and you have to wonder how much profound wisdom you can squeeze into a short song. However, at the same time, you don't want to be churning out rubbish, so it's just trying to, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah. You mentioned a bleakness there to your music. Has that kind of made the last 18 months perfect for you to be recording this album? Because the world has been a pretty bleak place in the last 18 months.
It has been a bleak place. Certainly there's no shortage of material, like the basic stupidity with which the people who seem to govern our societies spews forth over its subjects. In terms of writing music, absolutely. I've finished 2 or 3 songs in the last couple of weeks, which has been fantastic. Recording, not so much. I'm not one of those guys who has a home studio. I always go, like the last couple of records I've done have been in a place called Thornbury in Headgap, and I live down south, so that's outside the 5-10 kilometre radius, unfortunately. So as far as writing and finishing songs, it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
But like I say, I'm not one of those home recording types, so that's not really been beneficial so far.
Yeah. So I was going to ask that. How did you go about getting into a studio? Like you said, it's not in your 5K zone. So has that just been multiple trips to the studio to try and work on the album?
Yeah, that's right. Multiple trips. Like between the first and second lockdown, basically it was done in like 3 2-day hits. So the first 2 days I could get down most of the beds of all the songs, like all the meat and potatoes. Then I could listen to them during the second lockdown and figure out the parts that I wanted to redo and what I'd improve. Then between lockdowns 2 and 3, I got to chuck the vocals on and finish the tracks pretty much, and then get a rough sort of mix going. And then in the lockdowns number 3, I just sort of listened to all the rough mixes, and then between 3 and 4, I got to basically finish off the mix, and then we'd sort of have a break and then do the mastering. So it worked out pretty well, really, because normally you don't really have the benefit of that kind of time to sort of go back and listen to things.
So what's the plan now? The album comes out on August 27th. If everything's opened back up and we're able to, will you be looking to do some shows around that time as well?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I'm trying to do a launch on the 4th and maybe the 5th of September in an art gallery in St Kilda called Brightspace. It's a great sounding room, and it's actually quite big. So even if, as I suspect will be the case, there'll be a number of restrictions with the numbers. Hopefully that'll take place. I mean, fingers crossed. We can't tell what's going to happen tomorrow or in a week's time. I've been invited to do a few shows also in mid to late September, like this band called Orf, who I really like, are doing a launch. I'm playing at Swamplands. This guy in Ballarat at the Eastern Hotel, one's going to go down there. So there's a few little nibbles, and I haven't stopped trying to get shows. It's just that there's been quite a few cancelled in the last couple of weeks, and it can be quite a dispiriting experience. However, I mean, this is the case for everyone. I mean, everyone's, we're all sort of suffering.
Exactly. Now, if people do want to grab a copy of the album, they can do so with a pre-order at the moment at your Bandcamp, and we'll put that link up there for people. What would you say What would you say to people out there who are thinking about going and grabbing a copy of the album?
Well, obviously, I would advise them to do so. If people want to leave the well-trodden path, I describe the music as being cello pop tones of the void. It's basically a small cello ensemble with me singing. I'm also a really bad salesman. I'm extremely bad at selling myself or marketing myself, so it's a little bit difficult. But basically, for people who like ambient string ensemble type things with vocals, I guess, for want of a much better description.
Definitely. Well, mate, we'll put that link up there so that people will be able to grab a pre-order if they want to. But thank you so much for chatting to us today. It's been an absolute privilege chatting to you, and we can't wait to see you do some shows.
Awesome, and let us know if you want to come down to the launch or something.